This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin our show today with a look at the secretive American Legislative Exchange Council. The organization, often known as just ALEC, brings together major corporations and state legislators to craft and vote on model bills behind closed doors. It's come under increasing scrutiny for its role in promoting stand-your-ground gun laws, voter suppression bills, union-busting policies, and other controversial legislation. The organization's agenda has sparked so much controversy that 40 major U.S. companies, including Walmart, Coca-Cola, Kraft, and General Motors, have recently severed ties with ALEC. ALEC's the focus of a new documentary by the legendary journalist Bill Moyers titled The United States of ALEC. It'll air this weekend on Moyers Company, but is premiering today here on Democracy Now!
I've often told people that I talk to out on the campaign trail when they say, state what? When I say I'm running for the state legislature, I tell them that the decisions that are made here in the legislature are often more important for your everyday life than the decisions the president makes.
If you really want to influence the politics of this country, you don't just give money to presidential campaigns. You don't just give money to congressional campaign committees. Smart players put their money in the states.
ALEC has forged a unique partnership between state legislators and leaders from the corporate and business community. This partnership offers businessmen the extraordinary opportunity to apply their talents to solve our nation's problems and build on our opportunities.
I was stunned at the notion that politicians and corporate representatives, corporate lobbyists were actually voting behind closed doors on these changes to the law before they were introduced in state houses across the country.
ALEC has been, I think, a wonderful organization. Not only does it bring like-minded legislators together, but the private sector engagement and partnership in ALEC is really what I think makes it the organization that it is.
You might have heard the name ALEC in the news lately.
The American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC for short.
The American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC.
ALEC is a nationwide consortium of elected state legislators working side by side with some of America's most powerful corporations. They have an agenda you should know about, a mission to remake America, changing the country by changing its laws, one state at a time. ALEC creates what it calls model legislation, pro-corporate laws like this one that its members push in state houses across the country. ALEC says close to 1,000 bills, based at least in part on its models, are introduced every year, and an average of 200 pass. This has been going on for decades, but somehow ALEC managed to remain the most influential corporate-funded political organization you'd never heard of.
His name keeps me
until a gunshot sounded in the Florida night.
Trayvon Martin unarmed, but for a bag of candy and an iced tea that he was carrying.
Zimmerman.
You'll recall that the shooter in Trayvon Martin's death was protected at first by Florida's so-called Stand Your Ground law. That law was the work of the National Rifle Association. There's its lobbyist standing right beside Governor Jeb Bush when he signed it into law in 2005. Although ALEC didn't originate the Florida law, it seized on it for the Stand Your Ground model it would circulate in other states. 24 of them have passed a version of it.
How did this law not only get in place in Florida, but around the country? And all the fingers kept pointing back to ALEC.
When civil rights and grassroots groups learned about ALEC's connection to Stand Your Ground laws, they were outraged.
ALEC doesn't do its work alone. They do it with some of the biggest corporate brands in America.
Before long, corporations were pulling out of ALEC, including Coca-Cola, Kraft Foods, McDonald's, Mars, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson. Caught in the glare of the national spotlight, ALEC tried to change the subject.
You know, I think the entire debate needs to be reframed, and really what ALEC is a bipartisan association of state legislators. We have legislators of all political stripes coming together to talk about the most critical issues facing the states and trying to come up with the best solutions to face some of the problems.
So your point is it's not a partisan organization.
But ALEC is partisan, and then some.
In the spring, I got a call from a person who said that all of the ALEC bills were available, and was I interested in looking at them? And I said I was.
Lisa Graves, a former Justice Department lawyer, runs the Center for Media and Democracy. That's a nonprofit investigative reporting group in Madison, Wisconsin. In 2011, by way of an ALEC insider, Graves got her hands on a virtual library of internal ALEC documents. She was amazed by its contents, a treasure trove of actual ALEC model bills.
These are the bills that were provided by the whistleblower. That's just the index.
There were more than 850 of them. 850 boilerplate laws that ALEC legislators could introduce as their own in any state in the union.
Bills to change the law to make it harder for American citizens to vote, those were ALEC bills. Bills to dramatically change the rights of Americans who are killed or injured by corporations, those were ALEC bills. Bills to make it harder for unions to do their work were ALEC bills. Bills to basically block climate change agreements, those were ALEC bills. When I looked at them, I was really shocked. I didn't know how incredibly extensive and deep and far-reaching this effort to rework our laws was.
She and her team began to plow through ALEC's documents, as well as public sources, to compile a list of the organizations and people who were or had been ALEC members. They found hundreds of corporations from Coca-Cola and Coke Industries to ExxonMobil, Pfizer, and Walmart. Dozens of right-wing think tanks and foundations. 24 corporate law firms and lobbying firms. And some 1,000 state legislators, a few of them Democrats, the majority of them Republican.
ALEC is a corporate dating service for lonely legislators and corporate special interests that eventually the relationship culminates with some special interest legislation, and hopefully that lives happily ever after is the ALEC model. Unfortunately, what's excluded from that equation is the public.
In the Wisconsin State House, Democratic Representative Mark Pocan is trying to expose ALEC's fingerprints whenever he can. By one count, over a third of Pocan's fellow Wisconsin lawmakers are ALEC members.
When you look around, especially on the Republican side of the aisle, a lot of members of ALEC. Front row, ALEC. When you start going down to the chair of finance and some of the other members are all ALEC members. In fact, ALEC co-chair for the state. Row by row, you can point out people who've been members of ALEC over the years. There's two main categories they have. One is how to reduce the size of government, and the other half of it is this model legislation that's in the corporate good. In other words, there's profit-driven legislation. How can you open up a new market? How can you privatize something that can open up a market for a company? And between those two divisions, you're kind of getting to the same end goal, which is really kind of ultimate privatization of everything.
Mark Pocan is something of an expert on ALEC. In fact, to learn as much as he could, he became a member.
What I'd realize is if you join ALEC for a mere $100 as a legislator, you have the full access like any corporate member.
He also took himself to an ALEC conference for a first-hand look.
Hi, I'm State Representative Mark Pocan, and welcome to my video blog. I'm outside of the Marriott on Canal Street in New Orleans at the ALEC convention, the American Legislative Exchange Council.
That was where you watch the interaction of a room full of lobbyists. You know, free drinks, free cigars, wining, dining. Many people just came from a dinner that was sponsored by some special interest, coming to a party that's sponsored by a special interest, so they can continue to talk about special interest.
This is from the New Orleans convention. This includes a number of seminars that they held for legislators, including one called Warming Up to Climate Change, the many benefits of increased atmospheric CO2.
That 2011 ALEC conference, lo and behold, was sponsored by BP, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell, among others. Another of its events featured guns.
This is the NRA-sponsored shooting event for legislators and for lobbyists. Free.
There was even one offering free cigars.
Sponsored by Reynolds American, which is one of the biggest tobacco companies in the world, and the Cigar Association of America.
It sounds like lobbying. It looks like lobbying. It smells like lobbying. But ALEC says it's not lobbying. In fact, ALEC operates not as a lobby group, but as a nonprofit, a charity. In its filing with the IRS, ALEC says its mission is education, which means it pays no taxes and its corporate members get a tax write-off. Its legislators get a lot too.
In Wisconsin, I can't take anything of value from a lobbyist. I can't take a cup of coffee from a lobbyist. At ALEC, it's just the opposite. You know, you get there and you're being wined and dined by corporate interests. I can go down there and be wined and dined for days in order to hear about their special legislation. I mean, the head of Shell Oil flew in on his private jet to come to this conference. The head of one of the largest utility companies in the country was there on a panel, a utility company in 13 states, and here he is presenting to legislators. I mean, they clearly brought in some of the biggest corporate names in special interestdom and had them meeting with legislators because a lot of business transpires at these events.
The United States of ALEC. We will return to Bill Moyers' special report in a